Welcome again, dear students, with a new video of Module 4. Module 4 is about fiscal policy and public finance, and this is the last topic which we are going to discuss today of this Module 4. And this is very important topic of Module 4, the domestic and foreign debt crisis. All of you are well familiar with the problem of Pakistan having a huge debt. So in that context, this is an important topic. First of all, we would like to have thorough understanding of types of debt Pakistan is having and the nature of debt and statistics of the debt which we are having already in Pakistan. So first of all, we discuss that, and then we'll be moving towards the issues or how this debt crisis in Pakistan arises, what were the time periods and what are the reasons and what are the consequences of having that much debt in the country. So let's begin. So as we already have discussed the problem of budget deficit, we already have concluded that Pakistan is having a persistent deficit in the budget, and whenever the country is having deficit, country has to borrow, and that borrowing becomes debt of the country. So Pakistan is taking significant amount on account of budget deficit and current account deficit, still having the problem of balance of payment as well. So हम मुस्तकिल बहुत ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ डेट जो है डिफरेंट टाइम पीरियड्स पे लेते आ रहे हैं अपने बजट डेफिसिट को फाइनेंस करने के लिए और करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट को फाइनेंस करने के लिए. और इसके साथ साथ एन इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट इज़ वी टेक डेट or loan for some developmental projects, like nowadays we are having CPEC projects. So the amount of loan taken for the CPEC project is also the debt of the country. So these are the two main aspects to finance the budget and current account deficits and for some developmental projects of the country. और ये जो टोटल डेट है हमारा, इसका जो 1/3 है पब्लिक डेट का, दैट इज़ इन द फॉर्म ऑफ फॉरेन करेंसी, एंड दैट इज यूज टू बी सेट एज अ हार्ड करेंसी लाइक US डॉलर है, जिसमें हमने उसको रीपे करना है. तो हमारा जो 1/3 पब्लिक डेट है, दैट हैज़ टू बी रीपेड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ फॉरेन करेंसी. सो एज आई हैव टोल्ड यू कि हम इसको थोड़ा सा ब्रीफली डिफाइन कर लेंगे या डिस्क्राइब करेंगे इन केस ऑफ पाकिस्तान. सो पाकिस्तान टोटल डेट एंड लाइबिलिटीज़ कंसिस्ट ऑफ पब्लिक डेट एंड प्राइवेट डेट. अब ये जो पब्लिक और प्राइवेट डेट है, इसमें से जो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हमारा टोटल आउटस्टैंडिंग डेट लाइबिलिटीज़ हैं कितनी. जून 2017 में वी हैड टोटल outstanding debt and liabilities equal to 79% of our GDP, a huge proportion with reference to the gross domestic product of the country. और इसमें से जो public debt है, that is 85% of the total debt, and remaining 15% is the private debt of among this whole total debt and liabilities of the public debt. So 85% public debt है और 15% जो है वो private debt है हमारा. Now the composition of this debt, this total debt is taken from borrowing from the commercial banks, the central bank of the country, state bank, and national saving scheme, and then price bonds, sukuk, etc. And beside this domestic borrowing, the rest is the foreign borrowing, international borrowing. International borrowing is done from international financial institutions, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, IMF, and other bilateral countries from where we take loans for the country. So this is the composition of our loan from domestic economy and from external world. Before moving forward, let's briefly define कि domestic debt जो है वो किस टाइप का होता है. तो essentially it has 3 different types: floating debt, unfunded debt, and permanent debt. अब ये floating, unfunded और permanent debt क्या होता है? Floating debt is a debt which is based on the short term time period, and it is in the form of cash credit and treasury bills from the commercial banks of the country and from the state bank of the country. Next is unfunded debt. Unfunded debt is about medium term time period, and its target is general public, and it is taken in the form of national savings scheme instruments. Last one is permanent debt, and it's a long term debt, as its name indicates. Its time period ranges from 7 to 20 years, और इसका जो हमारा source है, that is insurance companies and commercial banks. So let's start the history, or review the history of the problem of debt crisis in Pakistan. And generally it is believed that debt crisis in the country arises in 1980s. This was the time period when the government was spending more amount of money as compared to what it is receiving as a form of revenue. तो हमारा जो spending थी वो बहुत ज़्यादा थी as compared to the revenue earnings. और इस time period में जो हमारा डेट है दैट ग्रीव फ्रॉम रुपीज़ 155 बिलियन $802 रुपीज़ हो गया. सो दिस इज़ अ ह्यूज अमाउंट इन 1990s में जो हमारा स्टैटिस्टिक था. लेकिन एक इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट ये है कि 1980s में ऑल्दो वी बिलीव दैट डेट क्राइसिस अराइजेज इन 1980s जब हमने एक्स्ट्रा लोन लेना शुरू किया. But beside that thing, our country was performing well. Our overall economic performance was impressive in that time period. Our overall performance was impressive. Our revenues were rising. Our growth was rising, and we had overall better economic statistics in the country. But beside that, there was problem of debt that was arising in 1980s. But interesting बात यह है कि if having that other macroeconomic better indicators, it was comfortable for us to go for debt servicing and debt repayment in 1980s time period. Debt arises, the problem of debt arises in 1980s, but it becomes the crisis in 1990s. और इसमें बहुत शार्प इंक्रीज आया 1996 से 1999 के टाइम पीरियड में पब्लिक डेट में. दैट ग्रीव फ्रॉम 515% गवर्नमेंट रेवेन्यू टू 625% ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट रेवेन्यू. सो बहुत शार्प इंक्रीज आया 1996 से 1999 के टाइम पीरियड में. और ओवरऑल 1990s इज द टाइम पीरियड व्हेन द डेट बिकम्स debt crisis or debt burden for the country. What were the reasons behind having that statistic in 1990s, and what were the consequences of that? So 1990s में इस डेट प्रॉब्लम का डेट क्राइसिस में कन्वर्ट हो जाने की बड़ी जो रीजंस थी behind that was the falling revenues in that time period and falling the growth rate. अगर if you recall, अभी हमने डिस्कस किया कि 1980s में डेट तो राइज करा था, बट बिसाइड दैट इकोनॉमी वाज ग्रोइंग एंड वी वर हैविंग राइज इन द रेवेन्यूज. बट 1990s में हमारे रेवेन्यूज भी फॉल कर रहे थे, हमारी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ भी डिक्लाइनिंग थी, एंड दैट वाज द time period where there was height of political instability, that there was frequent change in the government as well. So these were the major reasons behind. और इससे consequence क्या हुआ? सबसे पहला consequence, जैसे 1980s में हमने बात की, comparative analysis करें तो कि उसमें debt servicing was very easy, but 1990s में having these poor statistics and poor performance of the economy, debt servicing becomes a problem of the country. And the other major problem, और जो structural adjustment program का बड़ा क्रिटिक भी है 1990s में, हमारा इंटरेस्ट रेट बहुत ज़्यादा राइज कर गया. लिबरलाइजेशन ऑफ इंटरेस्ट रेट वाज अ मेजर क्रिटिक ऑफ द SAP प्रोग्राम्स इन द कंट्री, और इट राइजेस टू अप टू 20% ऑफ पर एनम. दैट वाज अ ह्यूज फिगर. सो इसका जो इमीडिएट कॉन्सिक्वेंस होता है मार्केट फेलियर. सो राइज इन द इंटरेस्ट रेट वाज अ मेजर नेगेटिव कॉन्सिक्वेंस beside the problem of debt servicing. Side again gives you a comparative analysis of the problem of debt in 1980s and 1990s. 1990s में 80s में हमारा जो डेवलपमेंटल स्पेंडिंग थी वो टोटल स्पेंडिंग का 40% थी, और then we have quoted and concluded the 1990s were the time period when there was domestic debt crisis, और 1990s में it falls to 25% of the total spending, and in 2000 हमारा जो डेवलपमेंटल एक्सपेंडिचर था that comes to 13% of the total government spending. So you can well analyze कि 40% से 13% पे हमारा डेवलपमेंटल एक्सपेंडिचर आया है. इससे कंक्लूजन क्या निकलता है? इससे हम ये कंक्लूड कर सकते हैं कि ये सारे टाइम पीरियड में व्हेन देयर कम्स डेट एंड डेट बिकम्स अ प्रॉब्लम एंड वी हैव टू पे बैक दैट डेट, सो हमारा जो इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट है उसका शेयर राइज कर गया, और वो जो शेयर राइज किया है उसकी जो कॉस्ट है दैट इज़ डेवलपमेंटल एक्सपेंडिचर. सो हमने जो शेयर ऑफ इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट है उसकी एक्चुअल कॉस्ट इज़ द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द कंट्री. So that is the conclusion, and that is the consequence of this debt crisis in 1990s. So beside this domestic debt crisis, we were having the problem of foreign debt as well. हमारा जो foreign debt है that was also continuously rising in all that time period. और अगर हम देखें critically तो जो 9/11 was comes as a rescue for the Pakistan because we have got debt scheduling from the foreign institutions. And if we see the statistics, 2001 में हमारा जो फॉरेन डेट था वो दैट वाज मोर देन 60% ऑफ द जीडीपी. सो यू कैन वेल एनालाइज हाउ serious was the problem of foreign debt as well in that time period. So we'll continue discussing the problem of debt crisis in Pakistan with reference to domestic and foreign debt in the next video. So see you in the next video, and till that you are recommended to have a thorough reading and learning of this topic from your recommended book or from your video lecture.